This is The Final Word. It is Season 16, Episode 36. Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins. The show brought to you by Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. As usual, I am coming to you from a casino floor in Reno, which is probably a first. This is not a SponCon collab. It's just that if you want to get accommodation in Reno, everything is also a casino. There's no way around that, and there's no way around finding anywhere else to record. So we'll have some music, we'll have some background noise. I'm getting kind of flashbacks to my university job just from the dinging of the machines. Don't do it. Stay off the cast floor. Not worth it. Do not let this be read as an endorsement in any way. It's just a reality of what's happening. Adam, you're at home in London, feeling pretty pleased with yourself because we've had a couple of running jokes on this show for the entirety of the time that we've been making it. One of which is that you've never seen a first class, including test hat trick, and you still haven't. And the other is that you've never made 100 in any form of cricket, no matter how bad, no matter how far down the pyramid you got. You had never turned up because you kind of liked coming in at around 7 or 8, whacking a few over mid-wicket and getting out. That tended to be the way that you went about things, and having seen you play a number of times, it still is. And yet, after you mentioned on the show a few days ago on Storytime, this again came back to this reference that it would obviously never happen. Before that episode even went out, you walked out on the weekend and turned up, and I think we need to start there.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's I still can't quite believe it, to be honest with you, because you're right. All the way through my life, opening the bowling for 20 odd years, probably 25 years, and you tend to bat down the list, and your objective is to bat quickly, and there's never really the opportunity to advance on that front, and nor did I have the game to do so when I was playing better cricket. But now I play a variety of cricket, and some games there is the chance to get in and get stuck in. And I identified Sunday as one of those. I actually said to my captain,
is this a nice way of saying that the oppo was shit?
Not exactly. I mean, they're a great club. I wanted to sort of say that Railway Taverners, I've played against them before, and Matthias Winter, who I wrote a column about, I guess 4 years ago. He's an amazing guy. He was named the Curator of the Year in the Middlesex comp this year for what he does at Edmonton. And he's a guy who found cricket later in life. He's from Germany. And so the story goes, and he told me this when I interviewed him, he didn't find it through Shane Warne. He found it through, as a leg spinner, homespun leg spin action. He found it through watching YouTube videos of Terry Jenner, which I thought was quite nice at the time. So anyway, and Matthias,
Terry Jenner's on YouTube. It feels like a pre-YouTube era.
Yeah, it was his coaching videos. Anyway, he does an amazing job with Railway Taverners, who play like 40 games a year or something like that. They're one of the best wandering clubs in London. So we had a fixture against them on Sunday, and I did indicate that I wouldn't mind batting up the order and just seeing what was possible. And I did give a chance early on. It wasn't like the perfect innings or anything, but
every 100 has one usually.
Yeah, I gave a couple of chances. One in the 90s as well, where I was caught behind. I could have been caught behind, but there was no slip in place, and the keeper went across and didn't glove it. But got through that nervy patch, and got to do the thing you think about as a kid. I don't want to go full self-indulgent here because it would be inappropriate to do so. But because it's not a game that's getting mentioned in the Wisden Cricketers Almanac, if you know what I'm trying to say. It's
not on your Cricket Archive page.
Quite. Exactly. I'm very aware of what this was. It's a great pastime to play with a lovely bunch of blokes on a Sunday. I love that team, the club we've got going there. Jeff, you've played for them. It's a really cool thing. We have it, Elaine's there with the balcony and what we can do after play and the sunsets and the pitch that always rags there, which mostly is what I enjoy as an off spinner, which is principally what I'm trying to do. But yeah, I mean, it's still a game of cricket, and still got to do the thing that you do. And my girls were there, and Winnie ran up to me when I was walking off, and and she'd been told what had happened, and yeah, that's special because I assume Winnie will probably remember that. Even though Rach wasn't really phased either way, she will at least at some level know that she was there for something that was quite important to me. So quite an earnest start to the show, but yeah, we certainly celebrated that on Sunday night when we got the win.
I think it's reasonable, no matter what the level is. If you've never done it, you've never known what that feeling is like in any way, in any form, in any capacity. Now you do, and now your bowling is going to go to shit because that's what happens to spinners who learn how to bat. Is they concentrate on the batting too much, they get bumped up a couple of spots, and their spinning falls apart. So you have that to look forward to.
Well, this is it, isn't it? All I've done thinking about batting for a couple of days, and I've got 7 games of cricket to come this season, and I've still got a bit of ambition with the ball. So I hope you're wrong, and I can go back to what I mainly do, which is try and turn the ball, not square, but enough on late season pitches. Sometimes it turns square, which is fun.
Just enough. It is late season in England. That's going to be a bit of a theme of our show today.
Yeah.
We've got the Australian men's team about to rock up for some one-days and T20s. We've got movement in the English coaching situation. We've got that season working towards its end with the county championship and the Rachel Hayhoe Flint. We've had the drafts for the Big Bash, the Women's Big Bash in Australia, with a lot of English players heading over. We had Bangladesh and Pakistan, hell of a test match there. So a bunch of things to talk through. We're going to start with something that's pretty downbeat. It's pretty sad at this point. The news about Will Pucovski coming through during the week. I mean, not really news, because I think we all knew that this was going to happen, or were anticipating it. And again, it's not entirely formal or entirely official, because this thing drags on. But basically the reporting out of well-placed people in Melbourne who are on top of this story, and in Daniel Cherney and Tom Morris, is that the independent panel that they'd called in to make an assessment about whether he'd be fit enough to continue, whether it would be too risky for him to continue trying to play cricket, given his concussion history, their ruling was that he couldn't, and that he'll have to have a negotiated exit, because he is contracted, but his top level playing career is done in cricket at a young age.
Yeah, it's hard not to grieve this. I know that's an awkward word to use, grief, because it typically refers to someone passing away, but he's lost a major part of what makes him, right? If you're a professional cricketer and you've got that prodigy energy about you. I remember well when he burst onto the scene with 400s in a week in a row for the Victorian under-19s. It was a glorious story. In probably the first season, Jeff, that you and I were really on the beat week in, week out, covering cricket together. And then he made another 100 for Melbourne in the ones on the Saturday. And so I think it was 500s in 8 days or something like that. And I interviewed him at the MCG. It was his first kind of proper sit-down print interview. He'd just done a bunch of TV. He did that's a camera bit beforehand, where it was hands behind his back, chest puffed out. And when he got the question about, are you the next Ricky Ponting, he gave the very diplomatic answer. And I remember kind of saying to him, mate, don't worry about it. We're sat down here, chill out. It's going to be fine. You just talk about your life, and we'll write something nice for Crick Info out of it. And so he did. And it was a really lovely story, because concussion was already part of it. The thing to remember is that with Will, very sadly, concussion was part of his life from his mid-teen years, when he was in a sling tackle in football and his head crashed into someone's knee. He missed several months of school. Then there was a door that hit him in the head. There was a ball that hit him in the back of the cricket nets. The luck this kid experienced before even turning 18, before even being a professional cricketer, was profound. And there was always that underlying risk that could get the better of him. But, he had this great attitude about, getting past it and being aware of what had happened to him and giving something back. He was studying at Monash University. He was working as a volunteer with kids with autism from memory, which was something that his parents were involved in. Great family. It really felt like he had this wonderful career coming, and that was reinforced by the way he arrived on the scene, that double 100 when we were in Johannesburg, Jeff, in 2018, the darkest moment in Australian cricket in modern history. Well, Philip Hughes' passing, of course, is the outlier there, but in terms of on the field with the Aussie Test team, the sandpaper incident, and there's this guy on the other side of the world making a double 100 in Shield cricket, and it felt like, right, this is going to be, from the ashes of what that team was, how it felt anyway. It was a bit different to that in practice. There's the green shoots of what might be in Generation Next, and that continues. There's the Willie won't hear through that period when he nearly plays Test cricket in January 2019, but they think better of it. There's some mental health challenges that we learn about. He's quite open and honest about through that period of time. Nearly plays in the 2019 Ashes, nearly starts the 2020-21 series against India, if not for a blow to the head in what would have been his last innings before his Test debut. Finally gets his baggy green in Sydney, makes a half century in his first Test match, and we sort of think all was right in the world, only for the cruelty of another unrelated injury, a massive shoulder problem that he received, he picked up when fielding in that Test match. And Jeff, I mean, I know you've been following the concussion side of this very closely and have had really strong views on this for 4 or 5 years now. I mean, my hope was always that somehow there'd be the happy ending. He made the 100 against New South Wales in February this year, right? So after it had all gone down, a number of other concussion episodes, some of them that were concussion, some of them that were anxiety, which he spoke about as well, makes that almost comeback 100, and everyone thinks he's on the cusp of being an international cricketer again. And 1 week later, it ends up being the final concussion, the one against Tasmania in the Sheffield Shield in early March. And that becomes the last chapter in his cricketing story. It just feels so cruel for someone who went through so much that there isn't a happy ending.
Well, exactly that. And that there was concern that some of the time the symptoms that he thought he was experiencing might be psychosomatic, essentially. They might be so related to the anxiety of being so twisted up, so wound up that every time he got clipped, he was so concerned about whether it would be another concussion or not that it became hard to tell them apart. I'm not sure how much that factored into the panel's thinking when they were making the medical assessment there, but it just seemed inevitable even before that last hit that there was no other ruling that a panel could credibly make. They could have come out and said that they back in his desire to keep playing, but it was always going to be whether that next knock came a week later or a month later or 5 years later. There was always the very high risk that as soon as he got hit another time, it would be too much. And it was probably too much already. And we know about the graduated risk, the cumulative risk from concussions and how much higher that is when contributing to long-term CTE and things like that. We've seen, you think about some of the medical reports that have come out from NFL players, dying in their 20s or 30s and how bad the CTE is there already. And so when you've got this long history, I would have loved it to be different. It just never seemed possible that it would pan out differently. So I hope that maybe given it's been such a drawn out process, he's been able to let it go a bit more gradually over a period of time. It's not like it's being suddenly taken away. I hope that he's able to play at some lower level where it's safer to do so and still be involved in the game in some way, and that it doesn't turn into something that becomes a negative. I hope that he's able to find ways to put his energy elsewhere, but to try to make that relationship with cricket a healthy one rather than always being a what might have been. And I think in a lot of ways it's onlookers like us who might be more sort of wound up in all this stuff and who might be projecting more importance onto it. Maybe he's able to take a more balanced look at it already because he's had so much time to try to get used to the idea. So perhaps it's more media people who will carry on about it more than he will. I don't know. I'm purely speculating here, but that it would be better for him if it turned out that was the case.
I think that, look, it's if he wasn't so fucking good, like the back-to-back double hundreds for Victoria in early 2021 in those games in South Australia, the one he made as a teenager, the double ton in Perth that I referred to before.
Even the test debut, which just looked so controlled and comfortable,
class.
You thought, okay, well, this guy could play 50 tests easy.
Oh, I mean, it wasn't just that, though, was it? It was he's got the maturity and the presence at the crease and the leadership credentials and the bigger picture attitude to life that maybe he captains Australia and maybe he becomes a generational talent. So that's going to take some dealing with for him. Of course it will. In the reports from Tom and from Dan, there's reference to the contract situation. He's not been at preseason training. Of course he's not, but he's contracted this season. I have no visibility on that. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I suppose that's the next hurdle to clear. And is there a place for him?
But there was always the clause with the contract. That was the point of the independent panel's report, was that it was a contract pending the result of that report. So there must be an extrication clause, but I don't know what that means. In terms for him, there's something to do with compensation and whether there are injury related payouts and that kind of thing. So there'll be a bunch of stuff to work through there as well.
Yeah, and absolutely. And again, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of that, but is there a place for him in the game? There absolutely is. I saw him commentate on Channel 7 a couple of years ago on the Big Bash. He's got a big cricket brain. He knows exactly what's going on. And he's articulate. He's emotionally in tune. He's been through a lot for a young man. I reckon he'd be terrific working in that capacity. Or indeed, we saw James Taylor. That's the most like for like that I can think of when very sadly, James Taylor had that horrific episode where he nearly died of a heart attack at age 25. So similar age. He was playing in the England one-day team around the time that it was happening. He just turned the corner as a test player as well. And within a year or so, he was absorbed initially as a commentator and then subsequently as a selector, a role that he's performed since. And I think he does now bat a little bit. I've seen some Nets videos from James, who's a great fella and great to have around the cricket world. So maybe he can take some inspiration there that there is a role to be played in the game outside of playing. I think it's just going to take time and healing because, for all of the reasons that you've been big on, Jeff, throughout, and I'm not dismissing what you've been saying, there's a whole other part to this, which is that when you're a cricketer, when cricket is your life, I remember reading people who were just like, oh, he shouldn't be playing cricket because his technique against the short ball isn't good enough. I'm like, fucking try doing his job, have some fucking respect. The people who got stuck into Pucovski saying that he wasn't good enough to play because he kept getting hit in the head, get a fucking grip. It demonstrates you're not a cricket person to start with, if that's your attitude. But cricket people, I was gibbering about it before. If this is in your blood playing the game, having it taken away is a sizable thing. And that's what I mean about grief. It's something that's being taken from him, and it just feels so unfair.
I don't think it's inappropriate to say grief because grief can be for any loss. It can be for anything that feels significant in whatever way. You lose lots of things over the course of a life if you're lucky enough to have a long one, and some of those losses will be people close to you. Some of them will be possibilities. Some of them will be potential. Some of them will be loves, and they might be loves of other people. They might be loves of things that you get to do, or a life that you get to you got to have for a while, or a place that you got to live. I think our emotional landscape is a lot more varied than just focusing it on sort of the most literal or the most common interpretation of the term. So, I hope he is able to be involved in some way. I think, look, it's no surprise that he started getting tangled up against short bowling towards the end, because it would have been on his mind so much, and you need to be instinctive, and when you've got those anxieties and those concerns, it would have stopped him being instinctive at times with a couple of those ones towards the end where it looked like he wasn't sure how to get himself out of a certain position as the ball was coming down. So, he needs to play somewhere. I suppose at any level, there's always concussion risk. Guys,
there is.
Players sweep off the top edge and hit themselves in the head playing fifth
one of his,
grade. Against spinners, it still happens.
His first concussion for Victoria is fielding at mid-on debut. I remember it. I remember it well. I wrote an article, because I was backing him in big time. I wrote an article when he made his debut for Victoria, and that ended with a ball bouncing up and hitting him in the head when he was fielding a normal ground ball that was just hit to him. It was no venom to it at all. So so that's the Will Pucovski story as a cricketer done for now. It feels a bit jarring to move into another retirement, but I mean, we've got to move on with the show. And it's not related to the playing of the game, but the writing of the game. Malcolm Conn, who has been a giant of our industry, a through line from McGilvray, who was talking about the game in the 1930s. We like doing links in the chain. Well, McGilvray was there when Conman started. There's that story that he covered his first one-day international, I think it was in 85, and it was a day-night game. It was on newspaper deadline, and there was a rain delay, and it didn't finish till 11 p.m., and he sent off the wrong team had won or something like that, owing to the way the game was moving. But now, of course, the job is so much different. We were in the pub with him, Jeff, you and I, a couple of years ago with Bretto, and we were trying to work out how many test matches he'd covered, and we just had to give up at one point. Like, it's just impossible. When you've been on that many tours for that many years, and you've been, the leader of the pack, as he'd been with us when we first got there. Jeff, you were there a bit earlier than I was. He was still working for News Corp then. And he, really owned that pantomime villain thing with when Twitter became a thing. And in England, he made a lot of money in England from playing the pantomime villain, and good luck to him for it. So you first would have come into contact with Conman then, and to come full circle on this, he's finished up with the Age in the Sydney Morning Herald this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's a retirement at the end of such a long career, and it's interesting to see the way that he's perceived, I suppose, by the reading public as well, because he was very happy to be an attack dog at times, and sometimes that would be, say, against England during an Ashes series, and people would go, look at Conman, he's a parochial cheerleader, he's green and gold, he's waving the wattle sprigs in the press box, and sometimes he was during a game, but if a story required him to smash up the Australian team, you better believe he was writing that story. There was no, he never modified his approach depending on who was getting covered. He just went straight ahead and did whoever it was who was getting covered. So that's what I enjoyed, and I think that's what people misunderstand a bit, is that, like, he will baseball bat whatever story needs to be baseball batted. There was no discrimination on that front, and then I guess getting to know him as a colleague, you find out that he's got a huge heart. He's his view of the world is an admirable one for the most part. He is somebody who believes in justice and believes in equality and believes in the right things being done. He's going to turn out to be on the right side of history on an awful lot of calls and situations. And it was, I mean, for people like us, it was just such an education. I think it's one of my favourite evenings I've had in this whole career that we've had is sitting with him in a pub in Sydney, having him talk us through how he accidentally at first and then increasingly deliberately broke the story about the Mark Waugh, Shane Warne betting scandal and John the Bookie and all the rest of it in the 90s. You know, I mean, a cheerleader would not have published that story. Nobody else knew that. No one needed to publish that story, and he chased it down to the end and made sure that it got out. So, I think his career deserves more respect than some people think it might.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as we wind down this part of the show, I didn't like him when I was a kid because he broke the Mark Waugh, Shane Warne story, right? You know, and now I understand that from the other side where people get grumpy with us. There was a lot of this around the Langer thing, right? People took the view that it was a media campaign to I mean, obviously that's not what happened. It doesn't play out that way in the real world. That's you know, I see this with my own football club, how, you know, supporters of Hawthorn have just made their mind up that there's a conspiracy theory. Like, the sort of shit I would say when I was 12. People still maintain those strongly held views when they barrack for something so strongly, and that passion is admirable for the most part. But he was often in the crosshairs of people with the most passion about the game, not realising that Con Man is as passionate about the game, you know, capital G, capital T, capital G, the game writ large, the health of the global game, as almost anyone I've ever met. Because he's been around so long, he bloody loves it. There's those pictures of him as a dead spit for Merv Hughes when they were covering earlier trips in. He's part of that 93 crew. Yeah, the mustache of that 93 trip, which Bormy was also on, and we spoke to Bormy about that tour on the greatest season that was trip. One underrated part of Con Man's career was when he became a media manager. Now, I knew him before that, but most of my interactions with Mal in the first, I guess, 4 years, Jeff, something like that, 3 or 4 years that I was on the beat week in, week out, was he was a media manager for New South Wales and occasionally for the Australia team. And I think it's worth saying that he really got it. He understood that when you're a media manager, and look, I've done that because that was my job before I did this, you've got two separate constituencies. You've got the media and you've got the talent, or you've got the principals, and they have to be in balance. When there's too much of a skew one way or the other, that's when the whole show goes off the road. And Mal always understood that. He had a healthy respect for new media, despite being a newspaper guy with ink all over his fingertips. He was a guy who understood what you and I did. No one has been more happy to facilitate interviews and just general access for the podcast world than Con Man, because I think he understood that it was evolving, it was changing, it was developing. It wasn't just about what was on the back page of the paper that helped set agendas, and well, agendas is the wrong word, but helped set the tone of the coverage, if you like. There are other ways to do that, and I guess we're part of that ecosystem, and he was brilliant at that. And when he came back to the newspaper world in 2021, 2022 or something like that, he was back to his absolute best. And, you know, you talk about the way in which he covered the story, the way he covered the end of the Langer story. There's no better example of the fact that he did not have any issue with sacred cows, put it that way.
He did not flinch when it came to, I mean, he vaulted back over the fence and he was like, well, here's some stuff I saw and heard. Went straight into that. I mean, bloody hell, like Mel went full tilt at everything. He had about 3 heart attacks on tour, and he kept coming back and fronting up again and saying, I'll go around again. I'll do another trip to India. No worries at all. You know, I mean, my first main memory of him was that 2013 series because he wrote the England players pissing on the pitch story at the Oval, you know, which I thought was an overblown story. But, you know, because I was sitting there in that press box at sort of 11:30 at night or whatever it is, and he's there with his binoculars out going, what are they bloody doing out there? You know? And getting incensed about it. And then when he started to write the piece, he got one of those old netbooks out, those big like clunky plastic laptops, and he was typing with like 2 fingers, real sort of boomer energy, like one finger on each hand, but each hand was coming from about 2 feet above the keyboard. It was like the wrath of God. He was really steamed up, and he was bang, 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 banging these keys. And the next day, it's the back of the Courier Mail or whatever it is about, you know. So I thought it's quite nice that they're they're sitting out there with the guitar and they're singing Wonderwall and they're having a good time, and he's like, no bloody respect for the game. So, we didn't always align on what was the story to report, but I have great respect for his tenacity and his endurance, and it has genuinely been a pleasure to work alongside him. So, Mel, good luck with what's next, and I hope we still see you at the cricket.
Yeah, he still wants the freelance, which I love. So if we see him around the traps, it'd be awesome if Mal ended up like this freelance, gun for hire. Any organisation should think about getting Mal to write a column a month.
Do a road movie. Do like a buddy comedy. We'll get Pete Lawler. We'll get Malcolm Conn, recently retired from the print business. Put them in a car together. Drive them across. I don't know. They can drive across the length and breadth of India or something.
Yeah, they could do worse than that. Okay, Jeff, as we go to our first break on the show, we should remind you all, not that you need reminding necessarily, that these shows are brought to you by Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. I should have said that at the start of the show, but I'll say it twice.
I said that at the start of the show.
Oh, did you? Oh, good.
Yeah,
you're more organised than I am. And I'm going to say this. If there's one thing about cricket that grinds the gears of most observers, it's losing playtime because it's too hard to see. And while logical solutions like allowing floodlights and pink balls might make sense to you and I, Jeff, we know that the powers that be and common sense have a fairly casual acquaintance. But if you're struggling to see, you can use the pink balls of life by booking your 30-minute assessment at Better View at Westfield, London. Get your eyes checked. Better View, Westfield, London. I'll tell you what, Sheehan's eyes were going pretty well when we were batting together. When I advanced to 100, he was down the other end keeping me in check. Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary, but better view. So we've been talking about them a bit recently. Jeff, you're in the UK in, a week or something like that?
A few days, yeah.
We're going to spend some time at Westfield London, and when we're there, we'll get both our eyes tested at Better View. We'll see whether...
I already know that mine don't work.
Well, you might need an upgrade or something, and if you do need an upgrade, you will find out there. Okay, Jeff, we haven't got through anywhere near as much as I would have liked to in segment one, shock horror. We'll be back in a moment to talk about more, including what's going on with the England men's coaching setup, for want of a better descriptor.